everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. This week's show is on Christian mysticism and is the second part of a two-part series. Thanks for joining us. If you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you are on Facebook, grant StreamYard access so we can see your name when you comment or question. Please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. I want to give a shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. Thank you so much for your generosity and support. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting it. Go to sherrypalace.com and use the support tab. There are literally dozens of ways to support me in the show. But just being here, welcoming us into your home and joining the conversation supports me more than you know. So I appreciate you. Okay, let's meet our guests and get smarter. First, we have the returning Karl Forehand. Oh, I messed up. We're going to do show first. Live is always awesome. There we go. Michelle Savenko, PhD, is retired but continues to serve by sharing messages, reflections, music, meditations, spiritual counseling, and more with open-hearted, open-minded, inclusive individuals, groups, churches, and centers, and loves a good drum circle. Reverend Shell focuses on new thought, teachings, practices, the universal principles, celebrating everyone as individualized expressions of the one and honoring all loving paths and people. She identifies as a new thought, practical, positive Christian. Coming from a very diverse background, she is pluralistic in her approach to spirituality. Welcome back, Reverend Shell.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So glad you're here.
Thank you.
Next, we have Karl. Back to it. Welcome back, Karl. Karl Forehand is a former pastor. He's a writer, podcaster, and blogger. He and his wife co-created the Desert Sanctuary, a home for spiritual nomads, and recently released their book, Out into the Desert, Thriving Outside Organized Religion, which is available on Amazon. Welcome back, Karl.
Hello. About to drop my phone while I'm talking to you. How are you?
So glad you guys are here again.
Thanks.
And we have a new panel guest. Jerry Zare is an ordained minister and has been a leader in the interfaith ministries for over 35 years. He helped create 4 interfaith organizations, including the Carmel Interfaith Alliance and the Indiana Multi-Faith Network. On March 19th, Jerry will receive the Interfaith Ambassador of the Year 2023 from the Center of Interfaith Cooperations, Indianapolis, Indiana. Welcome, Jerry.
It's good to be with you. Namaste. Namaste.
Thank you all so much for joining this conversation. This is part 2. And last week we talked about a bunch of different things regarding spiritual and Christian mysticism. But I know that there's a lot we didn't cover. So I wanted to just start with Michelle and see, where does Christian mysticism mean to you, and how does it fit into your life?
What does it mean to me? Well, to me, it's an experience. And for it to really be an experience, it has to be transformational.
Okay.
So, about 35 years ago, I took a series of classes on Christian mystics. And for example, one of them was Brother Lawrence. And he talked about how when he joined the other brothers in the monastery, he was looking forward to all the prayers and meditation. And next thing he knew, they put him to work in the kitchen. And he's peeling potatoes and is basically like, okay, I've got to find God in this. And it just really resonated with me, because my thing that I really didn't like to do at that time was swabbing out toilets. And I was like, okay, I've got to find God in this. And I'll be dating myself, but I think you guys probably remember the Tidy Bowl Man. And I would find myself singing a little jingle, I have found God, and it's the Tidy Bowl Man. And I'm saying, I'm going to write a song about this one day, which I still haven't gotten around to, but I still think about, I found God, and it's the Tidy Bowl Man. So
You know,
this is one example of my experience of mysticism.
that's interesting because I'm realizing at this age that doing dishes never ends. And I was so just begrudging the other day, like, oh, I don't want to do these dishes. And I switched it up to, I am thankful I have dishes to watch. I am thankful I had a meal. And it did change things for me, but I still am just really upset that part of life includes washing dishes until you die.
Well, and I think if you see everything as God, and in whatever form it is, and you feel that oneness with it, then that just makes a change.
It changes it from a point of hating the activity to being thankful for it. So I liked that. And something that I never would have experienced in Christianity. Jerry, what about you?
Well, I think of the mysticism, whether it's a Christian or in Islam, they have Sufism. We see the mystics and the whole mysticism in many different faith traditions, and so for me, it is those who step beyond the doctrines or the rules, those things that kind of give us structure. And for some people, they need that structure, I understand that. So I was always one who pushed against that. I was not good at organized or certain doctrine of beliefs. And as we talked before the show, we all said we love Jesus, but we had struggles with traditional Christianity, with some of the orthodoxy and the teachings and the structure of that. So for me, the mystic or the mysticism is that which wants to have that experience with the divine, that one-on-one, that internally, that experience in a oneness with that, which is different than social justice or that which goes beyond those other activities that we might live our faith out. The mystic is the one who is trying to get in, I think, engaged within and have a oneness in a harmony with the divine and that experience of that.
I love that, but also couldn't help but think of when I was doing research for the last show on this, that I found that the Catholic Church completely demonizes Christian mysticism. And that makes total sense because they need to be relevant, right? So if you have a relationship with your higher power on your own, then church is less necessary. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, there have been Christian mystics in the Catholic Church. There was some, and Brother Lawrence is a great example. I mean, as Michelle spoke,
Saint Teresa of Avila.
But they a lot of times were challenged. You're right, Sherry, that they were on the outside because they didn't fit in the norm, right? They didn't fit in the structure and
the box.
And I understand that some people need that structure. And as much as I'm not maybe a part of the institution, and I think there's been issues, there's also some things that are good about that church community our community can have. I think it's always when we can think for ourselves and not to let the pastor or the priest or anybody try to tell us what to think. We need to take responsibility. And some people don't want to do that. Some people just want to, you tell me what to believe and I can live it out. Okay. But you and us here and your listeners, I think, are people who are searchers, who want to awaken and have a greater experience.
Well, and just getting back to the Catholic for a second, since it was mentioned, my experience of my Catholic years growing up, because my family was part Catholic among a lot of other things, was that God was somewhere out there. Like I pictured him leaping from cloud to cloud.
Right.
And then came Jesus, then came the priest. And so you had all these physical forms, basically, and there was a hierarchy. And that's what most everybody believed. They didn't talk about, well, no, God is everywhere present, including within you. And I think that's the thing that the mystics really got in touch with, was it's not just this superhuman being up there in the sky someplace, that it is something that is within you also and just everywhere present.
And I
Talk
think
to me,
that,
Karl.
oh, yeah,
I'm
please.
sorry, Jerry.
Carl. No, please.
Karl?
Yeah, and I think with the Catholic mystics, a lot of times they recognize them later. It's later on, after they've dismissed them, that they realize, hey, this person had something to say. My example is in the tea shop. I talk about Van Morrison and that song "Into the Mystic."
Love that.
I discovered Van Morrison later in life. I wish I would have known him earlier, because I resonate with a lot of stuff he does. But in that song, "Into the Mystic," the poets, I lump poets and prophets and sometimes mystics together, because they're all trying to communicate something that can only be experienced. My tradition was Southern Baptist, and we tried to define, and we always wanted to know what we knew and what we thought and what we believed. I think the mystic is trying to tell us what they experienced, or this is what I feel when I'm with you, just like the poet. So Dr. Glenn Young says the mystical is a direct encounter with God, very simply, and it's the more than feelings or emotions. It's the experience that emerges from our practice and our evolving consciousness. As we do that, it's that deep experience that's really hard to explain. And I made the statement in the book, in the tea shop, that it's not because they're mysterious. These experiences is not because they're so mysterious that we call them mystical. It's because they're so real that we just can't explain it. So I was watching, speaking of Van Morrison, I was watching a Bob Dylan documentary earlier, and he was talking about his songwriting, and he said something like, all of these people are talking about my songs, what my songs mean. And he said, I don't even know what they mean. He said, it's almost kind of funny, to watch them debate about what I meant when I wrote the song, because I don't know. It's just something I experienced, it's something I felt. And I tried my best to explain it. And that's why I lump the poets and the prophets and the mystics together, because they all, have that same struggle. Makes sense?
I like that. Jerry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I wanted to continue on, I think, in this conversation, lifting up that the body, mind, and spirit, the oneness, that understanding of God present in everything, which of course in Hinduism, the oldest religion, in Buddhism, and much in the Eastern thought. And Jesus even spoke about the kingdom of God within you, the kingdom of God in your midst. And then it was that Paul was influenced by the Greek, by Plato, and the Greeks' understanding of the body and the spirit separate. And so that was how we journeyed in that way. But I think I understand that in the Catholic Church, when it first began, people didn't read. I mean, people we didn't have a Bible, I mean, it wasn't until the press was invented. And so a lot of the raising of consciousness, evolution of people is evolving. And even in the Catholic Church, it's evolving. It's just that when you have something that's been so long term, it's harder. And so those of us who are yearning for more or, have are moving beyond, and that's okay too, right?
And sometimes those wheels really move slowly. I'm thinking about Matthew Fox,
Yes.
who, to me is a mystic. And yet, as of, when was it, the either late 80s or early 90s, then he ended up not being in the Catholic Church anymore.
But I'm trying to stay engaged with churches and people that are, especially churches who want to learn about our experience within our faith traditions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the important thing, that I believe we have so much more in common than what divide us. Most of us haven't read the Hindu scriptures or the Quran or the Sikh scriptures, but once we are open to that and we have conversation with people, we see God is so much bigger and more in tune, and that's the real richness as we get engaged with people who have different ideas, like you're having here, Sherry.
Yeah, I mean, when there's isolation and the belief in religious supremacy, it kind of cuts off those communication channels, and really isolates the religion as opposed to expands it. And I think that anytime we put anything into a box of our own understanding, then we're going to have problems. And especially when it's a God figure, that's when people die.
One of the biggest problems with organized religion is that we, at different points in time, we decide this is what I believe and this is what I should believe. This is my creed. This is my belief statement. And we do that and we stop growing and we start defending what we already know. I don't see the mystics as bound by that. They say, well, what am I experiencing? What, Reiner, what I can't pronounce his name, said the Christian of the future will be a mystic or nothing at all. And I think that's because in the future, we're not going to have time for all of this defending our beliefs. It's going to have to be, Sherry, let's talk about our experiences. Let's get down to what moves me. Let's get down to what I care about and what troubles me, what I've experienced, and what, when I went inside, like you're talking about the kingdom of God, when I go where the kingdom is, then what do I see there, experience there, and then sharing that as an encouragement to others. So.
Yeah, I think you're right, Karl. And the reality is when we come in relationship with other people who are different ideas, different viewpoints, that we can value and respect them and have conversation with, we can grow. I mean, I can tell you everything that I don't like about Catholics or Mormons or Jews or Muslims, right? But what good does that do to, I don't think I need to bash those groups or faith traditions or organized groups, but what can we, and what I hope that we who are in that honor of reaching beyond, finding ways of common threads and how we can join together into that experience and the power of love that can change hearts and can change lives.
So if I'm understanding you all correctly, you are saying that mysticism is God outside of a box. Is that fair? If religion,
God is everywhere present. So
what does that mean?
There isn't a box big enough to put it in. God is energy. So how are you going to confine that energy?
I love that.
And I like Jerry greeted us with namaste. Mm-hmm. And the divinity in me beholds the divinity in you. And so to me, that's the same thing as Christ in you. That Christ doesn't mean Jesus the man. That's not his last name. No. But Christ in you is that spark of divinity that we all have. And if we just salute that in each other and realize that that's our connections to each other. We are, and I guess I'm probably pretty pantheist too. Because I do believe we're all a part of God. We're all in God, and God is all of us and everywhere present. But if you ask me, well, what is God to me? It reminds me of I had a banner in the 70s that said, love is ... And I always thought God is ... But if I had to give a definition, and I know Sherry's heard this before, at least 100 times, to me, God is the creative energy that I call love.
Yes.
And so if we're really made in that image and likeness, we're love too at the core of our beings.
Exactly.
And so that's our nature, to be that love. And if we connect with other people using that love, start out by different things that we have in common, then eventually we can get around to the things that we're not necessarily in alignment on or in agreement on. But if we just start with that base, I think it's really helpful. And just knowing that, yeah, you may not be expressing it right now, and that's a judgment, but I know that at the core of your being, you are love.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I don't think that we're going to get to the unity by just respecting and joining all the organizations together. I think we're only going to get to unity and truth and real peace when we move away from organizations. Organizations are causing the problem. Organizations have inherent problems. I know that they do good, but I think we need to move away from organized religion.
It turns
It's
into a clique.
But the thing is,
and
go ahead, Karl.
Inherent in those organizations are the problems that we face. The organization always comes first. We have to have a belief system to defend. And we've all tried. I'm a former pastor. We've all tried for dozens of years to get just the religious groups in a town to work together, but they're all an organization and they have to protect their own organization. And I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is to move away from that.
I wanna just push against that a little bit, or just not push, but to say that, human beings need structure. And if we didn't have organizations in the world, we would never have progressed. Organizations change, evolve, and certainly that structure, can limit. And the reality is, in human nature, we can only grow about 5% farther. We can take one step. We can't take 10 steps because it's too far. And so I just want to, rather than bashing things and saying those things are bad, I want to say what I stand for, not what I'm against, and what I want to live towards, which is finding that way of valuing human beings of all different places, who they are, and political differences, faith differences, atheists, agnostics, but we value as a human being. So as Michelle said, that we connect to that best of them, and that's when transformation happens. I don't think it happens with other ways.
Yeah. When you say structure, I hear hierarchy, and hierarchy controls and causes all kinds of problems. And I would be more for the organization and the good that it does if there wasn't so much bad being done right now. There's abuse and cover up and victim shaming. And, it's just like our issues with police and racism. We're all trying to make the old system that doesn't work, we're trying to pump it up and make it work. We need to be moving away from that. And that's just my opinion.
Well, and I think there's a difference of when you talk about denominations, there's a difference of religions and following, certain paths and doing it as a spiritual path. Like in my case, even though I've attended and been part of many different religions and denominations, and I identify as a New Thought Christian. It's a spiritual path. It's a way of life. It's not something that's encumbered with creeds or dogma or anything. The closest that my particular primary path gets to any kind of creed is to start a service at most of the centers saying, what do we say? Age.
I'll never forget what we said.
I know. It's like, oh my gosh.
It's funny because my wife would be unbelievable that I'm defending the institution. Well, I've always been one to push against.
Yeah.
And all I'm just saying is, whether it's in Islam, there are those who are more orthodox, more conservative. In Judaism, the Orthodox, there are people who need that structure because that's where they are in their spiritual development. And so can I honor them? Yes, there are abuses in those structures of any hierarchy, but I also want to celebrate that, the Catholic Church in Central America has done some wonderful things for the poor and poverty, for justice, in places that there were nobody to stand against the political powers. There are people and organizations that have done wonderful things after the war. Our denomination, after the Bosnia War, it would have never happened if there wasn't an organization to go over and help these people.
But you're kind of proving my point, Jerry. And I want to tie both what you and Karl were saying. I think that organizing is key, but an organization tends to lead to hierarchy, dogma, creeds, inclusiveness. And that's the reason why so much of religion has failed. So while I totally agree that everybody needs to organize to complete those tasks, especially with charitable issues, social justice issues, I am in the same line of thinking that an organization, a management offers control. And I see Christian mysticism as not having that control.
Yes. And we all are very much similar. I'm just saying there are some people who desire, in Jewish orthodoxy, some people who really desire this structure.
I think they should do better.
Well,
Well,
but that's where my judgment, they're on their journey, right? They're on their, and I'm on
right.
right?
Yeah.
We're all on a journey.
And everybody's where they are on their path for some reason.
Yeah.
Because I really do believe in reincarnation, and I really believe that
I do too.
We are working things out on this spiritual path. And there are some people that are at a higher vibration and a higher consciousness, and some people who aren't. The key is, especially those of us who are in a higher vibration, I have a friend who just calls them, those are stupid, idiot people. I can't believe they believe like that. And I go, that's really helping humanity, that's really helping be a peacemaker.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned, Jerry, Jewish orthodoxy, and my family wasn't Orthodox by any means, but I did have a Jewish part of my family, which was a main part, my mother and father. And they were the ones that gave me permission to explore when I was 12 years old. And that's something that the Jewish religions are known for, that you can ask whatever questions. I know when I asked questions at the Catholic Church during Vatican II, or the priest, I would get answers like, well, that's the mystery.
Right.
Or I just, don't know. And just kind of really didn't want to be bothered with it. If I asked the question of a rabbi, then he welcomed the question. We were encouraged to ask questions. So, and I think that's something that made, like, I was interested in the Kabbalah at a young age.
Yes.
In what all it teaches. But then I also had a grandmother that was a theosophist and had grown up with that in the late 1800s and stuff. So I had a real mixture of things going on. So I think it was just natural that I couldn't be any place for too long that made me feel like not just that God was in a box, but that I was being put in a box and not being able to ask questions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, for the people out there who have become stagnant with their faith and really want to explore, they don't necessarily want to leave. They believe, that Jesus is still their main guy. Who should they follow? Who are the mystics out there that you learned from?
Brother Lawrence, Meister Eckhart, that he was also a favorite because when I took this course during a time that I was shifting from being Catholic again to just saying, oh, I know there's something else out there, something that's going to make better sense to me, and really didn't know how to pray anymore. I had realized that I was confusing God and Santa Claus and thinking that I needed to pray in a certain way. And so I really didn't know how to pray at that point. And when I read about Meister Eckhart, he said that the only prayer, if you don't pray anything else, just say thank you. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. And so I would walk around all day, be looking for something, it would turn up, and I'd be like, thank you, God. Or if I just managed not to run into a wall because I have a perception problem and would have a close thing there, I'd be like, thank you, God. And so it was something that I would just say all the time, and really did feel like saying thank you was just, to me, when you're loving and you're thankful, you're grateful, you're operating at the highest vibration.
Yes.
And so it just showed up in my life. That again was transforming. And to me, that's still the bottom line of it being mystical. If you're having mystical experiences, it's going to be transforming.
Well, and I have to interject a little side story for everybody out there. I actually met Michelle because she corrected me on a meme that I had done where I had attributed Eckhart Tolle to instead of Meister Eckhart.
Yeah.
And she corrected me. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much for correcting me. And that's how we started conversating. And it went from there. So, yes, Meister Eckhart has changed my life in more ways than one.
I
Gary,
think,
what about you?
well, Michelle had mentioned about in Catholic Richard Rohr. Michelle, do you know Richard Rohr?
Of him, yes.
Yeah, and I really find Richard Rohr, especially if people want to stay within the Christian tradition, Richard Rohr is a very current, his writings and what has happened. Jim Palmer is another one who was a large pastor of one of the
Yeah, I love
largest
Jim.
churches, and he's disengaged from all that, right?
Yeah.
He's very good in that way too. So
We have a Rohr rocks. Carl?
and I think
Yes,
people just go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jerry, go ahead, finish.
one of the
ahead.
most important things I've learned since I started deconstructing and growing, evolving, whatever you want to call that, is to trust myself. I was taught that you can't trust yourself, and we say, but then we say, well, the kingdom of heaven is within us, and go inside. But it's learning to trust yourself. It's having having those experiences. I love like Teresa of Avila, some of those. And sometimes I go back to the church fathers, and I really am drawn to the ones that were thinking outside the box, that were, desert fathers and mothers and things like that. But I think one of the most important things is to learn to trust yourself. The inner knowing that you have is enough. And how many how many pastors do you need to teach you to love your neighbor, and the golden rule? And those keep coming up in all different religions. It's really pretty simple when you get down to it. Be still, have those experiences, and then trust yourself. So I don't have any go-to people, but I've seen a lot of pastors come out of organized religion and just getting rid of all the distractions and all the man-made stuff, and when they just get down to being still and being quiet, they begin to grow exponentially by themselves. We still need community. We still need to be connected with people and to the divine. But going inside and trusting yourself, I think, is what I was going to say. Bob Dylan taught me probably more than anybody else, but that might still be heresy. I don't know.
Oh, not at all.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Wisdom and truth comes in many ways, right? And it's for us to be open for when it touches our soul. Again, Richard Rohr says, I love this: when you love something, you give it soul. And so, when something connects with you, connects with me, it's that experience. And that's, I think that's part of our journey, that we want to help other people move to that, invite them, because for some, religion is intellectual. It's about ideas and theories and theology. And because it's a safe place, because when you start feeling, and that's scary, and that's being vulnerable. And so it's to invite people to those experiences, and walk beside them so they aren't alone. And then when people have those, they're very transforming.
I think the best example, it's like, and I know I'm not the only one that has said this to other people, but I don't really care what you believe. Show me what you believe. And I think just by doing that, when you're putting things into practice and somebody notices that, like I've had friends that have been like, you just seem so peaceful. How do you do that, especially with everything that's going on? And I attribute it to at least a few times a day, and not for long periods, but I do meditate. And people, in my experience, is that people in most churches are taught forms of prayer. And it was like, Jesus gave us a prayer that he modeled. He didn't say pray this prayer, though. He said pray like this.
Right.
So that, we would have like a formula to do a prayer. But nobody really talks about meditation in any of the mainstream churches that I participated in. And it's like, if you're doing talking all the time, you can't hear.
Yeah.
And even if you get a word in here or there, you can't really focus on it. So to me, meditation is an important thing.
Most definitely.
There's an old practice, Catholic practice called centering prayer, and I can't think of the guy's name right now. Father, what's his name? Anyway, centering prayer is very very helpful. To just focus on one word and not expect anything, to just be still. And you're going to say something, Jerry?
Well, there is that centering prayer within the Catholic and also within Christianity. I mean, Paul speaks about praying ceaselessly, and that it's about breathing. There is
Mhm.
meditation. There is. I mean, I certainly had always practiced that and taught that and helped people to center and breathe and focus. But so it's part of it. But a lot of people don't do it. I find, though, I really do believe when I do my day and start my day with 10 minutes of breathing and just clearing my mind and thoughts. I actually have I have a breathing app because it helps me keep in the same rhythm. But
Yeah.
that clearing of the mind, they just know, they've proven scientifically the power of that, starting the day that way.
Well, and I'm getting the impression that the difference between the Christian religion and the mysticism is one, and this again, this is just an impression of what you guys are saying, but the religion tells you what to think, and mysticism says, I need to know more. Would that be a good synopsis?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the
I
people
want to
who are
experience
mystic
it
are
for
always
myself.
questioning. Yeah, yeah. We are encouraging. We ask questions. It's a mystery. We claim it's a mystery. We don't know the answer, and there are some people who want somebody to give them the answer, and really, there's not a lot of answers in life, right?
Yeah. Carl?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're asking, the mystic wants to experience it, was all had needed to say.
Mhm.
Well, Dwayne
Yeah.
has a question. Do you think that some mystical frameworks allow for an over identification with divine presence, basically eliminating any actual interpersonal distinction between God and the creaturely mystic? Does anyone understand and can answer that?
I don't quite understand.
Let me put that
I
back
don't
up there.
either.
Dwayne, be clear. Show me what you mean. Framework for an over identification of the divine presence. Are you talking about humanizing a divine presence?
Or that we're actually divine?
Hmm. We will wait till there's about a 45-second delay. So as soon as he sees his part, we can get that back. Oh, here we go. There is a difference between universal divine ventriloquism, where there is only one real person, and when there are more than one persons. I don't know if that clarifies it.
Well, I think we're all individualized expressions of the one, if
Yeah.
that's what he's talking about. We've all got on our earth suits and are experiencing earth, but the spirit, to me, I believe the spirit will live on, and when we do, we all just kind of go and get all back together into our oneness.
We are spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience.
Yes, we are spiritual beings having the human experience. And I
Gary?
don't like to negate that experience. I figure we're here for a reason.
Yeah.
And so I want to be, that was one of the main things that really I took away from one of the first times that I either read or heard something from Bishop Spong,
Yeah.
was being fully human and fully divine. And it's like, I know I have that spark of divinity. I know at some point we'll return to the one. But I also want to use all my senses,
Yeah.
including the nonsense. That's my favorite sense.
I have a lot of that one too.
I think Carl, I want to come back and just lift up and reinforce, I think, Carl's point. When we think of Christian mysticism, as he says, it's the experience. And I think that's, for me, I just think that is right on, that it's about having that experience. I'm taking a group to India in November, and I'm looking so forward to people. If I don't know if any of you have ever been to India, but but it's a unbelievably rich and magical place, and it's the experience more than reading about it, that I'm looking forward to how that will enhance their life, expand their lives.
And for me, the experience is even more simple. There's a song, "Everywhere I look, I see God in everything." And when I walk out my door and I see a little trail of ants carrying a few crumbs and building, or see a flower blooming, the trees, all of those things, I'm one of the other things besides the experience is being present in the moment, which I do like to be fully present in the moment and just really feel my, again, connection with all of these things. And remembering that we're all just vibrating at a different frequency. And so, yeah.
Very well said. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank
I
you.
was still trying. I'm still
Go ahead,
trying to
Carl.
understand that last comment. And if they were saying, there's an over-identification with this divine
He
presence,
came
this
back and said, I'm thinking of the Atman and is Brahmin thing.
okay.
And that is Hinduism.
He's still way beyond us, I think.
Well,
Dwayne, you're going to have to come on and chat.
the Atman
But I
is
just
divine. The Atman is seen as a divine.
Yeah.
But the challenge, I think, for at least it was for me, and I think I come back to someone had said about caring for yourself. I think Carl again said, about caring for yourself, trusting yourself, was there are many voices we hear inside, the critic voice I talk about inside of us. And so how to get clarity about the divine and the voice of love and to be able to let go of some of those other voices that are going in our brain rent free from our past, and being able to let go of some of that, the critic voice or that voice that comes from your parent or from somebody else who is diminishing you or not letting you trust yourself. And that's, when we think about voices, I think about that for me, it's part of the journey was learning to trust myself and trust the Christ within, and the goodness within, and my own, and that wisdom, and letting go, and even just retraining my brain to let go of that negative and diminishing that would come in at times.
I forgot about them. I used to call them my board. They were my board. I would say I wanted to do something. They would tell me all the reasons that I couldn't, why I shouldn't, that I wasn't good enough to do that, and stuff like that. And for me, I feel like I'm coming from my higher self, from a place of divinity, when it's I'm going to say something or do something that's expressing love. Because I do believe that our purpose here is to learn to love. And because, like I said before, I believe that that's who we are at the core of our being, but sometimes we have trouble expressing that. Sometimes we speak before we think, and things like that. We act before we think. And but I do believe that as love, that our nature is to be expressions of those love. And so, like when they talk about, well, we're gods, or more commonly, we're Jesus, hands and feet here on earth. Yes, we literally are.
Yeah.
That's what we're here doing, or should be doing. And when I'm doing those things, then I know the board is taking a back seat.
There you go.
And I'm coming from that divine inspiration.
As growing up as an evangelical, I was always afraid of God. And I was always fearful of all of the judgment and the punishment I was going to incur just for having an everyday life. And I discovered the word, and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, pronoia, where it is the entire universe is conspiring for your success.
Mm-hmm.
And that flipped things for me, because instead of being afraid of doing everything wrong, of sin and all of those things, it all of a sudden took it to an energy of love and not of judgment, to say, look, we're going to do this. This is all happening for your best. And that really ignited a spirituality in me that religion took away.
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting, science is catching up with, I think, as Michelle said, you were a pantheist, you know, that of understanding God is in.
Yeah, among other things.
Yeah.
That science is understanding, you know, there was this on Netflix talking about trees talking to one another, communicating, sharing with them. We know that
Building roots with each other.
and they share, so that we know that consciousness is not just in human beings or animals, it's in plants. So now the divine, the essence of God, is now in all things in us. It isn't out there somewhere in that. And science is understanding. Science is saying there's quantum physics. There are different dimensions in the universe. The energy cannot be destroyed. And so when we see that we're coming, we've made us. I know it's taken some time, but I'm hopeful. I think we're moving toward that. More people are wanting to find ways of joining together to bring harmony and unity and to be witness of love and transformation. And I know it's a polarized right now, and that's the challenge for us, to love that person who's of that other political party, because we feel so divisive. Can we really love those each other? You know, and then we can have it.
Yeah, I mean, if your belief system doesn't make you become a more inclusive, loving person, then it's bad. That's my deep thought of the day. It's bad. Karl, were you going to say something? Oh, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, I think since Jerry mentioned science, one of the things that's really come up, which I'm sure, you know, it's been around for eons with pagans and stuff, but our understanding that we're not disconnected from nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
That we're all a part of nature. And the analogy that I use, which I stole from somebody else decades ago, is that it's like we're all drops in the ocean, and God is the ocean. And even though I'm not going to say I am God, because I'm a drop in that ocean, but I have the properties. And so it's up to me to use those properties. And again, you know, it comes down to love.
Yeah, the hands and feet of love.
And to affirm and celebrate that we are part of that. That's right. That the essence of the universe is in our being, and that's the power of that love. And when when we live out of that vibration, we live to a higher consciousness. So that's the mystic, is one who's open and says, I want to experience, and I want to live that
experiences
out.
Yes.
So that's what we hope people will do for their life.
So we're coming to the close of the second. Actually, VIP went for a full hour last week, so technically 3 hours in the conversation on this topic. Is there anything wrong with Christian mysticism? Is there anything to be weary of?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask that.
Yeah,
the only thing I could think of is if we stay if we stay only within ourselves, in my experience, and I don't
think yours is the only way.
Okay.
Right. Then again, because now I'm not being open, and part of being open is to engage with other people, to engage in the community, right? and that's when the transformation happens. So I go away on a retreat and I have that experience, but I still need to come into the world and live in relationships. So if I'm not a fan of somebody who goes off and is a monk, and not engaging with other
The
people.
isolation. Yeah.
I don't think that's healthy.
Well, and I'm not real big on labels. I just really have trouble saying I'm this or I'm that. And because no matter what it is, kind of like God, no matter what you define it as, there's something else. And
Something to contradict that.
or something to expand on that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm that too.
Karl?
Well, I keep, my habit is to get behind. I'll be reading questions that we couldn't understand 10 minutes ago. So I get behind. And Michelle, when you said we're a drop in the ocean, I have a friend named Carrie Hummingbird, who is somewhat of a mystic also. She says we're also the ocean in a drop.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that's the way mystic people think,
Yes.
where they're always pondering those things that can't be explained. And I think, for me, what I've found after being in the situation I was in, going through a deconstruction and just spending a lot of solitary time, that solitary time prepared me, set me back on the right course to do the things that matter, like love my neighbor, taught me deeply about words like compassion and presence and authenticity, and words like that have changed my life. I went to the tea shops about when I went to Taiwan and found myself in a tea shop, and in all of these teaching things that happened in the tea shop. It took me like 6 months in more solitary kind of situations in a mystical to really experience it and to really understand how that applied to how I was going to live my life now.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't ever get to living it out, like all of you have mentioned, I'm not sure that it matters that much. The personal transformation ought to be a transformation in the way we live. And,
exactly.
I get that really clearly from the guy who says he's an atheist now, but has called me at least once a week since I had my stroke. He continues to call me and reach out to me. He's lived out,
That's right.
Okay, well, we are at the top of the hour. Michelle, share some final wisdom with us.
The only thing that I can say really is that it's really expansive. So even though we've shared different things that we've done, different things that we've experienced, that everybody's going to do things in slightly different ways, and not to feel like you have to do certain things in a certain way and try to put it in a box, but just be comfortable. Go with what your intuition is telling you to do. The meditation wise, they talked about breathing, and that one of my favorite meditations was going out on my deck, and I did what I called my sweeping meditation. People walk a labyrinth. If you're looking for ways to really start feeling that presence within, whatever it is that you can do that's repetitive, just try doing things like that. But just don't feel like you've got to meet a certain criteria or do things in a certain way. Just start really being in the moment and getting in touch with all the different experiences.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on again.
Thank you.
Jerry, any final words and where can people find you?
Well, I'm on jerryzer.com, and really my focus has been this book that you put up here. That as I've been trying to put a book, not a book of theology because nobody would read it, but a book with 40-day devotional. The idea is that people could read one thought a day and then have exposure to the scriptures from the different faith traditions with that theme, whether it's on patience or forgiveness or on compassion or mercy, and to see that we have so much more in common, and that the God of the universe has brought that wisdom to the mystics of all of our and the great teachers of all our religions. So that's what I hope, is that somebody maybe who's searching and who's wanting to make a larger connection out of their own faith tradition, that maybe this book would be something that they would find very accessible to them. And that's what I'm really trying to help people see, how much more we can be peacemakers as we share love and that higher vibration, joining together to bring unity and healing to our world.
I love that.
Can I jump back in just for a second?
Sure.
The Peacemaker's Path. I thought that was so timely when I saw that. Yesterday started the season for nonviolence. So I think it's very timely, that is the Gandhi King season for nonviolence.
Thank you for remembering that.
Okay.
Karl, I have two for you.
Okay.
Be where you are and be who you are, which is what your saying is. And then your book. So any final words and where can people find you?
So everything for us is called the Desert Sanctuary. So we have a blog on Patheos. We have a podcast. We've been talking about church harm for the last month. We're going to talk about things we don't understand next month. But all of it's the Desert Sanctuary. There's also a Facebook group that's called that. But yeah, what I like to share with everybody is be where you are, be who you are, and be where you are, and be at peace. Presence, authenticity, and the resulting peace is what does it for me. That's what I'd share with you.
Well, thank you so very much. I'm going to send you guys backstage, and then I will catch you right after the show. Yes, David, I'm going to try and do a VIP. Yes, I will see you there. Thank you so much for joining us and having this wonderful conversation. I'll talk to you guys soon. Ooh, one more. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It's got me thinking. Maybe I'm a Christian mystic. I don't know. Again, I have trouble with labels. But I think that Jesus was the ultimate Christian mystic. He turned his Jewish faith upside down and looked at it completely outside of the box and said love was the only thing that matters. So I think that's really important. And that's the way that we should all take, regardless of what path that we have. As long as it's paved in love, that's all that matters. Next week's show is on neurodivergence, and hit that like and subscribe. Share this with your friends. Have a wonderful week. And remember, walk in love. Bye. Mwah!